kita ada lebih kurang 1 jam lebih lah. 1 jam lebih. Dan kalau ada the first series of questions that I can take and try to explain. Just go to the mic. It's a contest for the mic.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Nama saya Halim Muhammad daripada Majlis Perundingan Melayu Healthcare Cluster. It's not a question but more like food for thoughts. In 1990 we have 3 medical school and 1 pharmacy school. There is medical school is particularly UM, USM, UKM, and pharmacy school is USM. At that time we have about 61 private hospitals. Okay. Today we have about 31 medical school and about 28 pharmacy school. Private hospitals, roughly about 213. Okay. In 1990 there were about 44 licensed pharmaceutical manufacturers in Malaysia. Today, there are 43. Never move. Second, food for thoughts. In 1998, Singapore become PICS members, Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme. 2002, Malaysia joined PICS. Today, Singapore exports $30 billion worth of pharmaceuticals. Today, Malaysia imported 8 billion ringgit every year. So something must be very wrong there somewhere. So what are they? Our suggestion is few things. Number one, practically regulators cannot be player. In Malaysia, for example, the Pharmaceutical Services Department was tasked to be the champion for the pharmaceutical manufacturing. It will never happen because regulator cannot be players. That's number one. Number two, we need to separate the dispensing and prescription. Without that, the complaint of expensive medicine, that one will continue, and it has not changed. So these are the 2 things that I would like to highlight. Food for thoughts. 30 years pass. If you look at this sector, something is very wrong. Thank you very much.
Okay, next.
Assalamualaikum. Mohon izin untuk saya teruskan dalam bahasa Inggeris. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am Muhammad Muza Mohayen, Treasurer of Perantim. Perantim is an association representing local manufacturers with a manufacturing license, ISO 13485 certification, and registration with the Medical Device Authority, MDA. Please allow me to share some key challenges faced by our industry. Firstly, the high cost of international certifications like CE, which can reach up to 2 million ringgit per product, is a significant burden, especially for smaller manufacturers. Secondly, restrictions in certain countries that prevent our products from participating in their government procurement processes. Last but not least, limited access to advanced technology, which hampers the production of high quality, low cost and efficient products. Hence, we humbly seek your support in, first, encouraging the use of local products. This will help strengthen our industry and ecosystem. Secondly, to invest in technology, which advancement in technology can reduce costs and improve competitiveness. Last but not least, developing local talent, where training and education will help create a skilled and competitive workforce. We truly appreciate your attention and continued support toward the growth of our industry. Thank you, YB.
Hi, good morning, YB. My name is Ng Jentik, and I represent Kuala Lumpur Kepong. So we are in the palm oil industry, the plantation side, which partly goes to food, and we have our downstream business. We are in refining and also in the oleochemical industry. So I'm not going to try to make it into a wish list that you mentioned, but it's really some of the very big picture issues that I see for the palm sector. And one of it is actually harmonization of our export tax policy. You probably would know the biggest palm producer in the world is Indonesia. So although it's our neighbor, but they're also our biggest competitor. And Indonesia has a very, very sophisticated export duty and levy structure, and they are very, very focused on going downstream and supporting manufacturing and their biodiesel mandate over there. So one of the things I want to bring up is for the minister to consider is to think about how can we harmonize this tax structure so that we don't compete with Indonesia. And I think what the Indonesians are doing, I think it's a good effort because they are actually creating jobs and keeping all the technical skills and research all within the country and going downstream and becoming more and more specialized. So that's something for the minister to think about. And then
a lot of what Indonesia does revolves around biodiesel mandate. No?
Yes, which I'm also going to get to that point.
Yeah.
And is that something that we
less oleochemicals, more biodiesel mandate?
Biodiesel, yeah. Something to consider about as part of the what you call this self-sufficiency, if energy cost is going to be a national security. And then the second point, I think this is the wish list bit, is really one of the slides you mentioned there. I think on the agro food there, it says that our RD and C, is kurang matang lah, and that's something that if we want to go down into the food industry, do our own R&D. Is that something that the minister will consider to support companies like us to go and do some research on food? That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, maybe another question.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Datuk Seri. My name is Sophie daripada Persatuan Kebangsaan Pekebun Kecil Malaysia. So I don't have a question, but lebih pada suggestion lah and statement. So we are representing the smallholders lah in Malaysia basically. Dan kalau kita tengok the landscape of smallholders currently, kalau kita tengok aset pekebun kecil, let's just make it simple. Aset pekebun kecil dulu back in 30 years ago, macam tanah, and then for the other asset, labor, and also technology. 20 years, 30 years ago, this is asset for them. Tapi sekarang ni, this is the thing that preventing them from moving forward lah, because of their age. So currently, the smallholders in Malaysia, average is 60 years and above. And for land issue, sekarang ni, if we focus on 3 issues, which is the first is land. The first is land is they don't have the capability untuk dia nak operate their land anymore. And then their children, dia punya anak pun memang datang nak bangunkan dah ladang ni. Dia lebih fokus pada industri lain yang lebih memberi keuntungan lah. And then for labours pun dah jadi isu, sebab itulah orang muda sekarang ni memang tak nak kerja. And then for technology, back in those days, mesin cantas is a very, very good technology lah. Tapi sekarang ni, diorang nak angkat mesin cantas pun dah susah. Ini for sawit lah. And then for getah pun dah jadi masalah. And this the same thing goes for other commodity and food crop. So, to make it simple, our suggestion is, untuk kerajaan tubuhkan tabung pembangunan pekebun kecil negara. Or maybe we can sebut sebagai TPPKN. So, macam mana tabung ni first nak bergerak is maybe by grant padanan yang boleh dilaksanakan oleh kerajaan. And smallholders ni, dia punya isu dia ada tanah. Macam tadi saya dengar YB Datuk Seri sebut we lack of land. Sekarang sebenarnya isu tanah tu ada. Kita ada tanah yang banyak. Especially when we look at the rubber sector, there are 420,000 hectares of untapped area untuk getah. So this is the land that we can optimize for the near future. So TPPKN can act as a land bank You can provide the land bank for the people who need the land. And then other suggestion from our side is that to combine this TP-PKN, tabung pembangunan perkebun kecil negara, digabungkan dengan PT-PTN. Sebab apa? Sebab majority of the siswazah dekat Malaysia ni dia tak ada tanah. Especially yang fokus pada subjek-subjek pertanian ni, siswazah-siswazah di UPM contohnya kita tengok banyak yang buat fokus pada pendidikan berkaitan pertanian tapi dia tak ada tanah. And a lot of the siswazah yang membuat pinjaman PT-PTN ni dia tak membuat bayaran balik. Sebab apa? Sebab dia tak dapat kerja yang baik, dan kalau dia minat dalam bidang pertanian pun dia don't have access to that land. So this is where TP-PKN can come. So dia boleh, all the smallholders, all the siswazah ni boleh pinjam dengan land bank ni. Pekebun-pekebun kecil yang voluntarily nak terlibat dalam land bank ni boleh provide their land to TP-PKN untuk di-develop, and then the profit can be shared lah between those two. The siswazah pun boleh menerima apa profit yang dia terima dari ladang tu, dia boleh sumbang balik, dia boleh bayar balik PT-PTN dia, and at the same time can help to increase the fund for the land, for the TP-PKN. And then one other thing, second last is, I'm sorry, saya panjang sikit sebab I think this is very important thing. The next project yang perlu digunakan untuk land bank ni, kerajaan perlu fokus more on high value farming punya tanaman, which is sekarang kita ada kerjasama dengan high value farming group terdiri daripada pemilik dadang yang juga researcher daripada PAUPM, kebanyakannya adalah profesor daripada Persatuan Alumni sendiri daripada UPM, and they have the market already, a firm market. So the government can work together with this team untuk kenal pasti jenis-jenis tanaman yang sesuai to be developed by this siswazah yang boleh teringin nak terlibat dalam bidang pertanian. And this can solve a lot of issue. The three main issue tadi lah, isu tanah, isu pekerja dan isu teknologi. Because smallholders, when you're talking about the youngsters, the only thing they are looking for if they participate in the agricultural sector is technology, and then a very systematic punya sistem penggajian. If this can be solved through TP-PKN, so we are hoping the government can look this further up. And then last but not least, we are hoping the government boleh restructure balik agensi yang duduk di bawah kementerian. Sebab yang kalau kita nampak sekarang, agensi yang duduk bawah kementerian untuk berkaitan pertanian ada 3 kementerian yang pegang, KPKM, KPK dan juga KKDW. Jadi fungsinya sama. Dia menyukarkan, macam YB Datuk Seri sebut tadi, menyukarkan dari segi pelaksanaan polisi, macam mana pekebun kecil petani tu nak dapatkan insentif yang disediakan kerajaan. Jadi kita cadang supaya digabungkan. YB. Okay, terima kasih. One other thing, YB. Congratulations on your datukship. Okay, thank you.
Okay, mungkin saya jawab dulu satu round kan. Kalau tidak nanti saya lupa. Kan, I have to remember 20 soalan dia saya lupa. Soalan pertama dia Saudara Halim, and in fact to a certain extent sama dengan within the same category dengan soalan kedua Saudara Moza tadi pasal sebenarnya medical device kan. Saya I didn't spend a long time in pharmaceutical industry, but I did spend some time. And memang kita ada pharmaceutical industry memang challenge dia tu besar kerana the cost to develop especially your own IP itu sangat mahal kan, because you have to go through very long medical trial dan sebagainya. Slightly less on medical device kerana medical device which is shorter requirement, simpler requirement dan boleh register terus dengan MDA. I think kalau kita tanya, kalau Saudara Halim tanya dari point to ponder kan, saya ingat dia ada banyak pandangan. I have my own views, having been in the industry for a short while, having been on this side sebagai policy maker, Kementerian Kesihatan ada view dia dan sebagainya lah. Tapi kalau kita nak banding dengan Singapore, if we were to take Singapore as a benchmark kan, satu ialah Singapore was very successful in attracting the high value investments. So those investments that went to Singapore, they managed to really position themselves as a hub for research, and therefore their ability and funding to take a larger bite because they are the more fun, and therefore they could sustain longer, and therefore the products will eventually of international market. We have seen, I think, a big challenge now kerana on the one hand, pharmaceutical cost is really going up. Part of the medical inflation ni sebahagiannya ialah kerana medical cost, pharmaceutical cost, and itu juga I think is a function of both. Is a function of healthcare service to be able to balance between patented dengan IP. My view has always been is that, you know, for patented dengan generic, my view has always been that, you know, kalau ada produk yang memang generic, I rather take generic and won't pay for the brand. But not everyone is like that. And sometimes culturally pun, kalau kita pergi jumpa doktor pun, we want the patented brand walaupun ada IP, walaupun ada generic kan. Jadi I think in the late 90s, early 2000, there were policies, there were a lot of push to make sure that we do this step by step, while government try to build our own so-called pharmaceutical industry so that we can create our own patented products. But at the very least, we need to be able to replace with local generics. I think we still struggle with that. And even generics pun kita still struggle kan. Jadi even kalau kita buat generics pun, API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, we still have to import quite a lot dan sebagainya kan. Jadi I do agree dengan Saudara Halim tadi. It's very critical for us to look at and deep dive into what to do with the pharmaceutical industry, not just because of the need to have a vibrant pharmaceutical industry for value creation dan sebagainya, but it's also for the sustainability of our healthcare. Because it's very important to manage pharmaceutical inflation, and at least for those who can afford an equal quality healthcare service, if it means that you go for generic, then that should be more or less the way forward, either dekat public healthcare or private healthcare. Now there are certain things lah, contohnya Badan Pharmaceutical Kebangsaan and all this. I think these are the input that we will take. Of course, the challenge for Kementerian Ekonomi is that we develop the long-term plan, but the sectoral responsibility to lies with kementerian masing-masing lah. And in the case of pharmaceutical, that means that it's something that we constantly will discuss and figure out dengan Kementerian Kesihatan and also MOF, part of it, because to me it's like quite a lot of everything that happens dengan pharmaceutical industry in Malaysia. Public sector is a main stakeholder, and therefore procurement policy will actually have a lot of impact on the growth of pharmaceutical industry. So all those things, I can tell you, Saudara Halim, we are fully aware. We have to go through this process dengan Kementerian Kesihatan, dan di peringkat Kementerian Ekonomi, we have one advantage because we manage Majlis Tindakan Ekonomi Negara, and selalunya sectoral intervention tu, once we have a fair idea, once the program design has been finalized and harmonized dengan semua stakeholders, then we can formalize it through Majlis Tindakan Ekonomi Negara that will be cross-cutting government initiative yang semua kementerian terbabit kena patuhi lah. So I think that process will be ongoing, and most probably we will see interventions in pharmaceutical ni as a standalone just for pharmaceutical industry in the next maybe 1 year. It's slightly easier dengan medical device. I do understand licensing overseas memang mahal kan, tapi dekat Malaysia through MDA, Medical Device Authority, is not as prohibitive. But my view is that at this stage, we have an opportunity to increase adoption locally dahulu. And it goes sama juga, it goes back to public sector's adoption. Dan dia berpunca daripada the overall procurement dan juga budget process. Because budget prosesnya selalunya spek itu ditentukan di peringkat teratas. Jadi kalau di bahagian Kementerian Kesihatan that decide the spec. So kalau kita tak carve out and create a program so that Kementerian Kesihatan is given the leeway to progressively push for comparable locally manufactured medical device, memang payahlah. Walaupun medical device tu dah memang certified dan dah memang boleh dipakai, because adoption in private sector tu lagi payah lah compared dengan public healthcare. So the program is already ongoing. We've gone through a few meetings. Alignment is being made, and progressively di peringkat Kementerian Ekonomi, because permohonan bajet itu datang kepada Kementerian Ekonomi, memang we are looking at how to roll out progressively adoption of more and more locally manufactured medical device, especially perkara-perkara yang actually common sense, yang we don't need rocket science. It's not as if that we are asking our local public health to come up with MRI machine. Tapi there's a lot of handheld device contohnya that is non-invasive, yang you tak payah nak buat keluarkan darah and so on nowadays. Those things, even dekat household pun we buy from China those products kan. So those products actually I think government does have a big role to make sure that at least it's adopted first within our public healthcare system. My only caution is this: don't get trapped with relying on government program. And our experience in the last 50-60 years, sometimes good intention eventually ended up as a failure, because government started with carving out just to give the head start for locally manufactured products. Tapi lama-lama, whoever who gets into the system, and actually this goes the same dengan pharmaceutical industry juga, my own observation, I used to be part of that, the moment you get that carved out from government, and then we become very comfortable. The real market is out there. Whatever government carved out is actually just a proof of concept, and to give you the head start so that your business plan and your go-to-market plan too is credible. But the real market is not just Malaysia, the real market is ASEAN, China, and then it's just that we have to compete. Kalau medical device ni, memang kena, especially the smaller ones, memang kena compete dengan not just the European, the Western ones, especially more so with the Chinese ones coming to our market. Kan? But I can tell Sir Moza tadi that yes, I think government has already agreed on some allocation and some program supaya kita expedite and kita carve out adoption of some of these locally manufactured medical device that actually of equal quality. It's just that they mungkin tak ada brand name ataupun the scale that international competitors have. Tadi the question from KLK and I think this whole issue about biodiesel, we wanted to do downstreaming and oleochemicals since I was a single guy, still not married, late 90s, early 2000. I remember there was one period where government agencies spent a lot of money buying oleochemicals companies overseas, in Canada, in Netherlands, and so I remember that part. You see, I think that has to happen, that has to continue, and it's a matter of survival. So I think large-scale plantation, palm oil plantation companies will continue to push for downstreaming for higher value products, simply because as you downstream, you get better value creation. And we will always be subjected to the normal challenges, access to technology, competition, and so on. The slight difference, I think, when it comes to biodiesel mandate, because I have my views about biodiesel mandate for a long time, I think is a question of option for value that as a country we have to make. I think my impression is that Indonesia can do that, satu, because of its scale of production, secondly, because of its cost of production. And therefore, they can have a biodiesel. They are not B20, B40 already. B50, and I remember those years they started with B10, and then so it's already B40, and B40 means the blend of 40% palm oil into diesel, and they could do it because I think their volume gives them an advantage on economies of scale, and therefore cost of production is cheaper, and they use that as a counter measure against price fluctuation. Because you always have a huge volume that you can mop up and push it out to biodiesel, and we may not have that kind of volume, and we may not have the size. It's like kalau crude oil, countries like Saudi, the big OPEC brothers, Saudi and Russia and 2 or 3 others, because of the sheer size of their global volume, and also because of their much lower unit cost production, they can play around with production volume and mop it out somewhere else in order for them to influence a global price. I'm not sure our volume now put us at a position when we can do that, because if we try to do biodiesel mandate, even at B20, but the price is so much higher than the diesel price, then the economics doesn't work. And so I think that's the bit that is very difficult for government to have a national biodiesel mandate of the size that Indonesia has. But having said that, I think comparatively, our expertise, R&D in even oleochemicals or even downstreaming is actually much better compared to Indonesia for the time being. And this is something that government actually memang allocate a lot of money. Okay, whether or not it eventually reaches out to companies yang betul-betul buat R&D, whether in the form of grant, whether in the form of tax deduction and so on. That is something that we are reforming internally. I think it's not so much that whether government has a program or not. Government allocates about how much? Kita punya it's about 1% of GDP. So it's almost like 1 billion, 1.3 billion ringgit R&D grant every year that government gives out to various agencies and ministries. But layers of bureaucracy, how these are designed, sometimes they tak sampai to the people that really can make use of this research grant. And if you look at our R&D infrastructure, actually we have a lot of gaps. The only way for us to track R&D of the private sector is actually through tax deduction. And then when you submit for your tax deduction claim, it's actually one big item. And then, of course, IRB will come and try to confirm. There is no requirement, for example, for private sector to submit information about their R&D activities. And that actually makes it quite difficult for government to even know what's happening out there beyond preaching. So it's like we have this ayam bercakap dengan itik, you know. Government kata, kita dah allocate banyak ni, why is not happening? And why are we still falling behind, kan? Private sector kata, you know, government tak bagi. Government kata sila buat R&D, you know. So, but part of it is actually very structural. Other countries in the world, they have actually regulation that mandates and make it compulsory for private sector to submit R&D information. Of course, you know, you have to manage in terms of IP and so on lah. But in order to build an ecosystem where government's programs and R&D grant can really go to those private sectors or public sectors that really need it, actually kalau kita compare, our infrastructure is actually quite basic. So M10, Mosti dengan Kementerian Ekonomi have presented to M10 a joint paper of the overall reform of R&D, and the whole idea is how do we debottleneck and simplify this bureaucracy. What are the infrastructure that we need to put in place? Decision has been made, you know, it's going to cabinet. Kementerian Ekonomi and Mosti have this challenging task of going to the public with that reform details of what is going to happen, maybe March or April. So hopefully by March and April, we can start presenting to the public. This is how R&D is going to be much better in the future. Because my difficulty as Menteri Ekonomi, every year, public and private sector will come screaming at me, give us more money. I'm all for it. And for this stage of our economy, we do need to pump more money into RDI, research, development, commercialization, and innovation. It's given. Our general expenses on R&D is not even 1% of GDP. For other countries to reach where they are now, they spend about at least 2.5 to 3%. But so far, a lot of R&D money is actually pumped by government. And these are public money. So until we put the infrastructure in place and to make sure there's more transparency, more outcome-based, and we make sure that we mandate the research in all the important sectors rather than basic or general research just for the sake of having a grant. So these are being put in place because in terms of economic reforms, I think our credibility as a country, as an economy, trying to do what we do, if we don't do this, international investors will start questioning us. It's impossible for us to leapfrog to the next level of value creation unless we resolve the R&D, commercialization, and innovation. And the RDI ecosystem is not just a function of how much money is being pumped, it is the whole ecosystem must be built so that it's more transparent, so that it is less bureaucratic, so that it's more outcome-based. And hopefully, 2025, Musti and Kementerian Ekonomi, we are hopeful that this is going to be a year for big RDI reforms, and then corporations, industries then will be able to see, how then you can start coming in. Last question tadi pasal perbadanan tabung tanah pekebun kecil kan. Likewise, I think sama juga, diagnosis tu kita sedia maklum. Sebenarnya kita ada legacy problem lah kan, dalam tahun 60-an, 70-an. Kita bermula dengan, in fact RMK pertama, kedua, ketiga tu, banyak fokusnya ialah macam mana to consolidate small aktiviti pertanian ini kepada dalam bentuk perladangan. So as a result of that, banyak agensi-agensi yang ditubuhkan. Kita ada RISDA, kita ada Felcra, selain daripada itu kita juga ada syarikat-syarikat peladangan, ada yang bersaiz besar, ada smallholders kan. Likewise sebenarnya peruntukan kepada agensi-agensi untuk memberi dana ataupun grant ini sebenarnya adalah projek yang berterusan. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think RISDA memang ada tabung dia, Felcra ada tabung dia kan. But my impression is this lah efisiensi setakat ini tidaklah mencapai sepenuhnya. Maksudnya kalau kita bagi X juta, X juta ini kalau ikut costing dia, kalau diagihkan melalui program-program pembangunan semula tanah-tanah terkumpul ini, baik yang kalau I think di bawah Felcra, baik yang diserahkan kepada Felcra untuk diuruskan ataupun yang pekebun kecil di bawah RISDA, kalau X million amount is meant to redevelop Y hectares. Actually dia tak jadi Y hectares. X million disbursed and spent, tapi the percentage tu mungkin 60% of the Y hectares, 70% of the dan sebagainya juga ialah kerana it's also the transition we have had with our society. I mean, tadi yang saudara yang tanya tadi, it's a challenge sebenarnya untuk mendapatkan budak-budak untuk bekerja ni. And I've sat down with a few smallholders and the complaint is the same. Market banyak, jualan baik, tetapi untuk mendapatkan lokal untuk bekerja is nearly impossible kalau budak-budak lah, kalau bekerja. Tambah kalau kelapa sawit paling susah. Tapi pertanian lain pun, kelapa pun payah kan. I remember asking one smallholder, dia kata kalau bayar 3,000 pun orang tak nak sekarang budak-budak kat kampung tu. Walaupun dia tak ada kerja, still kena ambil pekerja asing. So dia sanggup untuk tak kerja. Jadi bentuk kerja apa yang dia nak dalam apa nama ni, sektor smallholder semua ni kan. Apa nama ni, kalau dia jadi mando dia sudah. So we have to contend also with that society problem lah kan. Kita as we develop, memang pandangan orang pasal sebab kait buah ni bukan murah tau. I think the cost, I don't know KLK bayar berapa, but I think the total monthly cost untuk seorang pekerja asing kait buah kelapa sawit can easily go to about 5,000 a month. Campur 4,000 yang dibayar kat dia, campur dengan kos yang lain semua, is easily 5,000. It's actually more lucrative than becoming an engineer. Tapi yalah, I mean, you can't force it. Jadi sebab itu, I think, as I say, in terms of diagnosis, I think kita semua bersetuju bahawa we have a lot of leakages, inefficiencies kan. Itu juga sebahagiannya kenapa Kementerian Ekonomi buat banci pertanian tahun lepas. Tahun ini kita akan umumkan keputusan dia dan sebagainya. The last time banci pertanian dibuat tahun 2005. And so now with the latest banci pertanian 2024, actually kita ada maklumat yang paling terperinci, guna tanah, jumlah pekerja, tanah terbiar, smallholders berapa, that will fit into our next round of planning. Whether it becomes a tabung, whether it's because actually in essence tabung tu dah ada. Tabung tu memang dah ada dan diuruskan dalam bentuk program-program yang berlainan di bawah agensi-agensi yang berlainan. If the question is actually scale, then I agree with you. Kadang-kadang kita sebagai sebuah negara, kita buat beruncit-runcit. Dan saya juga faham pandangan daripada agensi kadang-kadang, ialah kerana benda ni dah berlaku, tapi bila dia, as I say, X amount disbursed, dia tak jadi Y hectares. X amount disbursed, kemudian dia bertempur semua ni untuk get the outcome, dan sebahagiannya, and I think it will be confirmed by apa nama ni, by banci pertanian, kita pun, I think whatever numbers that we have so far dari segi jumlah petani, jumlah pekebun kecil ni, even those numbers are inflated. Sebab bila kita laporkan kat parlimen ke apa, data dalam kerajaan, berapa orang petani, berapa orang pekebun kecil kan, contohnya petani, macam mana kita kira berapa orang petani yang dalam Malaysia ni? Selalunya kita tengok kepada jumlah penerima subsidi. Kerajaan bagi macam subsidi baja, allowance ini kan. Jadi bila kerajaan di parlimen, orang tanya sebenarnya berapa jumlah petani kita, and based on this macro number we do macro planning untuk pertanian semua kan. Kita ambil jumlah orang yang claim. Tapi I think with banci we will be able to confirm sebenarnya bukan semua yang pekebun kecil ke yang dapat manfaat, petani yang dapat subsidi, bukan semua petani. Dia sebenarnya cikgu, tapi dia ada kebun sikit kat belakang. Actually, it's true. Jadi akhirnya, you see whatever numbers and our understanding about pertanian, guna tanah sebenarnya tu, we have to recalibrate, and that's the process that we're going now. I mean, I'm so glad that sebenarnya that massive exercise of banci pertanian, in fact kita tengah clean the numbers now kan. It's not easy because kita kena survey semua, tanah berapa, ayam berapa, lembu berapa, petani berapa semua ni kan, so that we get that number. Based on that, I think it's going to be a vital input for us to know how to do this more efficiently in the future. Sama ada it comes out with one whole tabung, sama ada it's in different program design. Saya rasa we are on agreement on that. We don't have any objection to that. The challenge is how to do this efficiently, supaya dia betul-betul akan ada kesan kepada sektor pertanian kita. And di peringkat Kementerian Ekonomi memang tujuan kita ialah untuk to mainstream modern farming. Sebab tu kalau tengok kepada kajian separuh penggal RMK 12 tahun lepas, kita ada 5 sektor fokus. Sektor yang lain tu semua orang macam okeylah faham. Peralihan tenaga, advanced E&E, digital and tech, ini semua yang hebat-hebat semua ni kan, REE, rare earth elements. Tapi ada satu sektor tu yang macam tak fit in, which is modern farming. So dari segi dasar kerajaan RMK 12 sekarang bersambung dengan RMK 13, saya rasa pertanian moden akan terus dapat bajet yang besar, akan terus jadi tumpuan ekonomi. Tetapi kadang-kadang is a lot easier dengan greenfield industry, because you design it, kemudian you gunakan yang terkini, and then you have less legacy issues to deal with when it comes to transitioning farming, peladangan smallholders ni into modern farming where it is driven by market economics, where it can offer high value jobs, high tech. We have to deal with a lot of legacy issues, termasuklah legacy issues agensi, kementerian dan sebagainya lah. And those are the process that we are going through. Well noted. The real challenge is macam mana nak bertempur dalam kerajaan. Then I think that's the real challenge lah. But I think that's a commitment and acknowledgement that we need to do something very radical. Otherwise kita nak buat sesuatu pada skala yang besar ni to leapfrog smallholders and our farming plantation into modern ones, kita akan berterusan ada masalah-masalah struktur yang ini. Okay, so next round of questions.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Datuk Seri, saya tak boleh tunggu lama, kena duduk sakit pinggang. Saya Syed Zikri Syahuddin daripada Majlis Perundingan Melayu. I represent about 23 business clusters today, and some of them are here today. Now, most of the question YB dah jawab tadi. So I do out of 7 tu tinggal probably only one question left. Okay. Now, most of the ministries will be submitting their RMK 13 punya submissions. Now, we have one question, a very important one. Macam, now, I'm talking about Agromakanan lah, food security kita ni. Daitin Zaidah will note this down also. Every time RMK 13, RMK 12, 11, 10 dulu pun run of the mill, business as usual submissions of RMK punya plans. Now, I'm sure that Kementerian Ekonomi has done this. Cost benefit analysis. You have many models, many methods of calculating. But have you actually given it down to the ministries to do it? Now I give you one example lah. Today I sit here today because actually I'm supposed to be at Kementerian Pertanian, ada amanat menteri ni. But I chose to be here today, very important. Okay, so this cost benefit analysis, for every ringgit that the government spend on capital expenditure, on subsidies, for every ringgit, the benefit calculation on the cost benefit analysis, many arguments on this. Now, for every ringgit, what is the best that you want out of the 1 ringgit? Now, has it been driven down to the ministries? I've seen this because you know, you did the IPR in Tan, you know the supply chain. Now, when you talk about supply chain, macam kerangka food security ini, you have like indirectly 8 ministries, bawah ada directly 4 ministries looking into this. Now, are they coordinated in terms of the supply chain? You may have MDEC looking into, mostly MDEC looking into AI, IoT on agriculture. You have upstream agriculture, assuming like aquaculture farming, you have Jabatan Perikanan, LKM looking into it. The market, the processing, the whole supply chain. And government comes in, looking at the supply chain, intervene at the weakest link in the supply chain. Now, is it well spent money by the government to strengthen the supply chain? Are you creating an alternate supply chain? So that is the real question now. Can the ministries that submit to Kementerian Ekonomi, there ada a process that they have to go through, cost benefit analysis for every ringgit that the government is going to give them, subsidies ke capital gain. This we want to know. Yeah, by March, I think they should be able to do it. That is my last question. But the rest you answer already. The agriculture is very important. Food security is very important because when we did the plan tindakan nakol that day, they were talking about many models, many theories. I said, look, you should just look at the supply side saja. How you control supply, because demand you can always plot. Supply side is very important. How you control supply, you get the right prices that you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you Tuan Zaid. Saya senyum sebab saya boleh jawab. Next.
Assalamualaikum Datuk Seri. Saya Nizam Kahar daripada Ain Medicare. We are local pharmaceutical manufacturing company. I believe you know us.
I do.
In fact, I started in pharma more or less the time.
What, about my time or I wasn't
About
there
your time,
long.
about
my
your
time.
time.
But I wasn't there long.
Yeah, I started in pharma when you were there. Okay, but we didn't meet. Okay, Datuk Seri, I would like to highlight about. Please allow me to bring us back into pharmaceutical, medical, healthcare. Yeah, it is not that it is important and other segments are not important. No. Because what presented just now in terms of the 3 challenges on the slide. Number 1 is about API. Okay, when we talk about pharmaceutical industry or pharmaceutical products, we have to know that they are the originals and the generics. Okay, as long as the original products or the drugs are still within the patent period, the doctors have no choice but to buy. Okay. At the same time, we are as generic manufacturers and suppliers so much driven by business. Yeah. It is commercially driven. But I believe most of the manufacturers, local manufacturers, will have obligation to the nation. Okay, we have got many supports from various ministries, MOH, MOF, MITI, even your ministry. Cuma, what I can say is that for the first issue just now on API, I would like to ask or perhaps suggest if there will be a government intervention to look at how can we reduce the dependency.
Now, our generic players mostly import APIs from India, lah. Is it?
Yeah, but there are hundreds of drugs, there are hundreds and hundreds of API, and we are.
The API ni actually dua-dua tech pun pakai API, pharmaceutical pun pakai API. This is API pharmaceutical, active pharmaceutical ingredients. Not apa nama ni, kalau API apa ni, programming interface, not. Anyway, so it's, people refer to the same thing, but this is pharmaceutical. It's basically the active ingredients for you to do generic drugs lah.
For example, for Iron Medicare, we go as far as Brazil, yeah, for our API. But perhaps we can start looking at the direction, the strategy direction of API with the government intervention. If we cannot have all, can we have few?
But okay, you know, I didn't spend a long time in pharmaceutical kan, but API ni yang dah tak ada pattern, so basically the formulation is publicly known. What's stopping our local companies from manufacturing API?
Very good.
We have one, I know that we have one in Penang, Sungai Petani, they are doing quite okay kan, but I suppose we don't have enough lah, so much so that even though I think imported API. So what's stopping our companies from producing APIs?
Yes, Dato' Sri, very good question, but I do not know. We don't know whether we can resolve this because it's the size.
It's the size.
And the commitment of local manufacturer, perhaps regional. Okay, we have many manufacturers locally and regionally. We talk about harmonization, but actually we are competing with each other. Yeah. So this kind of API supply or manufacturing or R&D prior to that really need very strong government intervention. Otherwise,
when you say government intervention, you mean?
Of course.
Apart from setting aside fund, and in fact government has done that. One of Equinas punya investment is to buy an API company lah, tapi itu just one company lah. But at the policy level, when you say government intervention, it means?
This is where we need to have a G to G.
I see.
Because we can talk to manufacturers of other countries. Perhaps we remove certain trade barriers. But, for example, CPTPP, you know, we can go to other countries, but other countries are coming here as well.
Yeah.
So, API, I believe, we need to have a block. A block that would be very much encouraging to the players within certain region or certain blocks. Okay, that's three boleh eh. Number two, not so much related to our local manufacturing. I mean, Iron Medicare, but when it comes to healthcare, it's a popular topic nowadays. Yeah, we both came 20 years ago. Then we saw what healthcare is all about. Okay, people who are covered or who are afford, they can go to the private healthcare centers. The rest will have to go to the government hospitals. Okay, in between there are teaching hospitals. We call it teaching hospitals, the PPUM, HUSM, yeah, also being cramped. Not only because of the cost, but because of the capabilities. Yeah? If I may suggest, maybe I believe your ministry or UCAS has been taking some steps. Can we have more this type of hospitals where it is just like BOT, for example, build, operate and transfer by the private players for certain concession years, and the rates or the charges is in between the government yang RM1 tadi ni dengan the private. The next question is to construction, we can do it fast. The next is the equipment, the training, the manpower, the doctors. We have a lot of thousands of doctors move from government hospital to private. So this is what we can curb as well when we have this new segment of government hospital. Yeah. At the same time, we can have all these housemen, the young doctors, more opportunities. We can start in this central region, KL and Selangor. So there is what I would like to suggest in terms of improving healthcare. If we do it now, if we start something this year, we can see 5 to 7 new hospitals in 5 years' time, actually, Datuk Sri. Yeah, because population, the growth of the population and the patient. Okay, lastly, on the third point, in terms of capability to manufacture, in terms capital limitation, I believe that today, Alhamdulillah, in Malaysia we have many pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturers considering our Malaysian size. Why? Some of the products are being exported. So the financial or capital capability, I would say, manageable. Okay, like in Medicare, we reinvest. We have no choice but to expand because we need to cater the increase of demand and supply to the government hospitals, to private hospital and our export market. The predicament is whether we can secure the sales locally first. That is the key point. And the other one is on R&D. I think for biopharmaceutical, we leave it to the big players like Pharmaniaga, like Duo Pharma, and other multinationals facilities. But other than that, I think the R&D is very much determined by the size of the market and the therapeutic area. Thank you very much, Datuk Sri.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Assalamualaikum YB. Saya Nazrul dari Kapitani. Kapitani sebuah syarikat pemula dalam sektor pertanian yang membantu mendigitalkan data pertanian ladang mengikut piawaian amalan pertanian baik dan sekaligus memastikan hasil pertanian ladang itu selamat untuk dimakan. Kita dengar daripada pembantangan tadi berkenaan dengan the trend about the negara tua, bottleneck yang akan dialami oleh some of our healthcare industry. Justru bagi maksud RMK 13 ini, kita mencadangkan agar kerajaan turut menitik beratkan pensijilan amalan pertanian baik, MyGap, dalam sektor agromakanan sebagai komponen utama transformasi sektor makanan lah. Bagaimanapun terdapat 2 cabaran utama yang perlu diselesaikan. Yang pertama, ketersediaan platform digital, yang mana pada masa ini Kapitani sedang membangunkan sebuah platform digital untuk MyGap. Dan kedua, supaya harga tanaman yang mendapat pensijilan MyGap ini lebih tinggi di pasaran. Seperti fokus harga hari ini, kalau kita tengok harga lantai padi yang diwawarkan, kebanyakannya hanya melihat kepada kepentingan pengguna dan tidak kepada petani atau pengeluar lah. Justru satu soalan kepada YB, apakah pertimbangan untuk RMK 13 ini kita akan melihat dengan neraca yang sama, supaya kita tidak mengulangi masalah yang sama dan saban tahun kita mendengar rungutan yang sama daripada petani lah. Di pihak Kapitani dan juga petani kecil, kita berharap agar petani tempatan tidak rugi, pengguna juga tidak rugi akibat kita beli sayur murah. Saya selalu labelkan sayur murah ni kebanyakannya sayur expatriate farmers yang ditanam oleh Bangladeshi, Myanmar di bawah power line. They use quite a cheap chemical without us knowing, dan this chemical probably contribute to some of our implicate to our health punya condition. Kita tak
Saya
tahu.
tak apalah sebab saya tak makan sayur.
Dan
saya selamat.
so we hope that to be considered one proposal on the MyGap, and second on the policy lah. Either we want to focus more on the consumer side, or we want to balance between consumer also the petani kecil. Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum YB. I'm Dr. Faisal from Bioeconomy Corporation. So we are an agency under MOSTI. So I actually had a very long first question, but I think YB answered most of it already. So I'm very glad to hear that Kementerian Economy and MOSTI are working together. In regards to that specifically, so back in the day we had very silo type of projects and initiatives done by ministries, right? But especially today, you see a lot of things cross, and it doesn't come completely under the ambit of one particular ministry. So, as an agency under MOSTI, right, sometimes on the ground lah, kita turun padang kan, we do have issues sometimes when it comes to when we do something and then part 2 involves another ministry, we have that kind of a problem. So could it be something that Kementerian Economy could be the if I use the word taikor lah, to bring us both together?
That means more problem for us.
And the second question or comment, YB. So under Bioeconomy, for example, for one of our programs, Bio-Based Accelerator, we have about 250 SMEs and startups all under the bio-based sector. For BioNexus status, which are biotech companies, we have more than 200 companies. So just why I'm telling you this is that all these companies, right, they all want to play a part in the initiatives and the programs that the government has put out there. But in regards to them, how we can support them, I see that a lot of our programs that we're doing right now, sometimes they go up to a certain level and then they stop. Because the assumption is, okay lah, you have reached the commercial stage already, you can survive on your own. But, when we speak to a lot of our companies, we realize that a lot of them, they still need help. So even our big BioNexus companies also, right, they still come to us for assistance and they say, can you help me to open this market, get this certification and so on and so forth. It pains me to compare it to our contemporary down south in Singapore, but I think one of the things that A-Star has got really right is the end-to-end punya facilitation that they provide for a lot of their companies lah. So again, I think perhaps that is something that we need to look into. When we do programs, we cannot just do it according to what we have planned and then we stop, because there is a continuation to it. And to share, a lot of these companies can significantly contribute to RMK 13 and where Malaysia wants to go to. Thank you, YB.
I think kita kena hadkan 4 je, no more, sebab selalunya dia akan bertambah pukul 5 kita tak habis ni kan. So just this is the final 4 people, kita pun nak kena berhenti for lunch kan. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Hello.
Saya Saiful Bahri Muhammad Saleh. I co-chair the Digital Productivity Nexus at MPC. I'm also advisor for PICOM and also on the board of cybersecurity. Now, I like to refer, YB, your comment tadi tentang next 10 years ASEAN, you projected 700 million fourth economy. I think just Indonesia alone, in the next 10 years, they are the fourth economy in the world. I think that's projected. So even Singapore, probably the fourth financial center already now. So while other ASEAN countries have their strength and some weaknesses, my question is to YB, in this year alone, how do we position ourselves or capitalize as a chair of ASEAN? Of course, I ask in a digital perspective, because the last 5 years with MPC, we've developed transformation guide, roadmap for local players, but like you say, regional, so we should be positioning regionally. And where do you take the lead? That's one question to you. Second, related, very much related, which I think all the industry are facing, and that's talent. Refer to IMD competitive, I think that's a very big concern. We are sliding in many sectors. And it's talent, we are losing our brain drain to other countries. Even ASEAN countries, they can pay like 3 times more than what we can pay. So there's a big concern. We may not be able to achieve. I'm talking about this year, YB. So how do we, I did mention it to the KDN, how do we capitalize on, let's say, some talent, foreign university student? We may have to change some policy that we can capitalize on them to work, to help us out. Or the digital nomad. I mean, there's a lot of them. They like Malaysia, but I don't think we're capitalizing on their talent. So we need that knowledge worker. If not, our positioning, be it local or regional, would not be achieved. That's the second related question. Thank you.
Thank you. Banyak ni, okay. Why do we do this? Let me try to answer dulu yang the first 4. If you don't mind standing sekejap, the last three kan, because otherwise I lupa and it's not fair to those yang tanya. Tadi soalan pertama Tuan Syed Zikri tanya whether there is a cost benefit analysis kat Kementerian Ekonomi ataupun dekat kementerian masing-masing lah kan. I think that kalau saya boleh berkongsi the proses lah, Kementerian Ekonomi menguruskan dan meluluskan belanjawan pembangunan, development budget Kementerian Ekonomi, sekolah, jalan, dana, fund semua ni. MOF menguruskan OE, operating expenditure, gaji gitu kan. Jadi sebenarnya I don't know how many of you yang involved in the budget process at your respective organisation. Budget proses dekat kerajaan ni lebih kurang 9-10 bulan satu cycle. And memang penat lah. Jadi contohnya kita cycle kerajaan kan, kita bentangkan bajet di Parlimen bulan 10 tahun lepas. By bulan 2, kementerian-kementerian dah kena key in permohonan bajet untuk tahun depan. So it's almost a 1 year round, and the reason why cycle tu panjang, satu because of the size of the government lah, the bureaucracy. Keduanya because of layers of screening. Sebab dia akan key in dan Kementerian Ekonomi akan screen satu-satu permohonan bajet kan. I go through every single projek baru. Jadi kalau setiap tahun ada berapa ribu projek, memang I go through every single one. So I know siapa yang nak minta duit untuk buat baka lembu jantan, siapa nak buat duit ni every year. Jadi what I can share with you, Tuan Syed kan, actually the budget process tu is competent. You know, I came from private sector. You know, we went through, I managed part of the Petronas punya downstream and upstream budget dulu. Is actually competent. To be frank, in terms of the budget process, there's nothing much that I can complain about. Is there tools to do cost benefit analysis semua? Ada. Okay. So sebab itu kalau tanya kepada jabatan-jabatan semua kan, dia kata ya kita go through ni, kita kena naik ke EPU, turun naik untuk dapat bajet ni, the bidding process kan. Kau tanya kat saya, you know, sometimes kita menghabiskan berbulan sampai tengah-tengah malam go through every single one. Dan pegawai-pegawai macam Datin Zaidah, semua yang bersabit dengan permohonan bajet pertanian go through bahagian dia grill dulu sampai terbakar, sampai turn dia saya grill dia sampai terbakar. So they make sure dia dah go through this cost benefit analysis sebelum sampai kat saya kan. Does it work? I think we have mixed result. And it's actually just beyond apa nama ni, the actual budget process itself, and dia daripada policy setting, and I think policy setting is the easiest to do. We more or less agree. Kerajaan tak ada yang tak bersetuju. Rakyat nak ini, nak itu. Sometimes ada trade-off lah. But by and large, we know where we want to go. So policy setting, baik dekat RMK ke, baik dasar-dasar. Sebab tu setiap kementerian, setiap sektor ada dasar dia sendiri. More or less okay. The problem is program design. Jadi dekat kementerian contohnya, dia daripada dasar 5 tahun ini kita nak contohnya mengurangkan import makanan so that our SSR so contohnya kan, dia nak translate daripada dasar utama negara kepada program design. Actually that's challenging. Kemudian because it's challenging because the program design ni is no longer just a question of policy support. It's no longer about legislation. It's about the market. More and more as we become a market economy, our complexity of economy increases. Dia bukan negara komunis tau. Kalau negara komunis senang. Kerajaan kata produce banyak ni duit, setiap seorang kena buat banyak ni. Pergi buat. Everyone dan kerja kan. But when it's a market economy and as the complexity increases, then the whole value chain and supply chain tu by and large is private sector. Private sector ada banyak isu dia, macam Datuk beritahu tadi lah, dia sebenarnya the whole value chain tu kan. And that's what I think we di peringkat Kementerian Ekonomi untuk RMK 13 contohnya kan, it has to be a wholesome approach. It cannot be a piecemeal approach. And to be fair, it cannot be an instruction or pointing finger baik kepada kementerian itu ataupun baik kepada private sector and so on, because dia ada banyak masalah berangkai yang perlu diselesaikan. Some of it is bureaucracy in nature. Some of it sebenarnya is economic behavior in nature, that we have to make some tough decisions yang private sector ataupun rakyat marah. Some of it is basically more rigor in budget process, and I think things have improved a bit in the last 1-2 years. Yalah, orang lain mungkin rasa lain, but I think that government departments work better, cross-cutting ministry, less silo. Saya ingat masa awal-awal dulu, masa kami memulakan Intan kan? Actually semua orang maki kita orang, sebab dia kata ini bukan kerja kau. Why Kementerian Ekonomi nak buat program macam ini, and you want to fund this, might as well give the money to us, let us do it kan. Kami ada banyak lagi ni kan. Of course we approach it from a socio-economic perspective. Kita nak bagi kerja kepada orang susah, dan it's a lot easier buat modern farming di kawasan miskin daripada suruh orang buka kilang. And the job creation is the same. One tapak Intan create jobs for 200 people. Actually kilang sekarang nak cari yang buka 200 payah. You nak suruh buka kat Gua Musang kan. So we see it from that perspective, but we also have this objective to show that we no longer can function macam dulu, that kita tengok projek pertanian contohnya ataupun keterjaminan makanan ni daripada perspektif kita je. It's actually the whole value chain. It is about the whole economics, and therefore you need to be able to scale up new business model and so on. After 2 years, I think less noise lah. Jadi Tuan Syed boleh bayangkan, as we try to break silos and as we try to combine effort supaya the budget is bigger and you can do it at the scale. Sebab masalah kita ialah beruncit. Dia kalau kita tak berhati-hati, as a country, kita suka tick boxes. Orang kata, ya kita nak masuk dalam tech gini-gini. Kemudian akan ada kata, oh kami pun ada platform ni. Never mind ada 10 orang je pakai. Orang lain buat tu, kita pun nak buat tu kan. Tapi it never reaches the scale. And unless you reach a scale, you cannot change the structure. And scale is a function of budget, is a function of focus kan. Jadi dulu kalau silo banyak sangat, you have to divide. Kalau ada 5 billion, you kena divide. Lama-lama dia jadi runcit, dia tak ada kesan. So that's going forward, yang it will not work with one instruction. It's actually going through this process yang lama. Tapi I think we have made some efforts, and I feel like pandangan dan paksaan Datuk Seri Anwar tu actually memang diterima baik, that break the silos, you have to work, I will chase you and so on. Dan kita ada majlis-majlis cross-cutting kan, kalau macam ekonomi di M10, kemudian ada NACOL and so on. So kita pun dah banyak beralih daripada total responsibility for one sector by just one kementerian or by one agency, because we have, I think it is given. Dan role yang dekat Kementerian Ekonomi is precisely that. By now, I think agency tahu, by the time they come for budget to us, we will grill them. Because question pasal supply chain, pasal, scale, we always ask about scale. Kalau beruncit ni selalunya saya, kalau sekadar untuk justify our existence, that's usually payahlah nak lepas dekat peringkat kami. And I think once we are able to do this progressively year after year, is the transformation that public sector has to go through, supaya we push things based on the value creation and ROI in the same way that we would normally do lah. Second question, Sir Nizam tadi tanya pasal pharmaceutical. First pasal API, I do agree. I think kalau dalam RMK 13 pun, part of the new thinking is that we must move away from the old mindset of giving purely tax incentive or tax or capital top up as investment incentive. We need to start moving into how do we use IP. Sama ada access to IP to build local capability or access to high level IP to lure international investments in Malaysia. That they can only have access to this IP if they come to Malaysia. Our view is that we have to start having a basket of different type of incentive. Sekarang ini yang kita ada is only bagi tax break, bagi pioneer status, kadang-kadang kita bagi cash injection and so on. So in that same spirit, that the next layer of economic development must really focus on the question of IP. API basically falls into that category juga. And my ministry has been actively pursuing contohnya how to position Malaysia when it comes to IP access and IP ownership. Well, certainly when we develop the next sectoral plan for pharmaceutical dengan KKM dan industri yang lain, we'll definitely see how we can tackle this problem of API. Your second question and suggestion, I think we are on the same page. You know, masalah sekarang ni dengan medical, the sustainability and affordability of healthcare in the future, kan? Healthcare is booming now. Private healthcare does make a lot of money, and Malaysia also is becoming like a hub for medical tourism. So I think there's a lot of money going into healthcare now. And also public expectation of the quality of healthcare service. Our problem is, we need to manage the medical inflation and affordability in the long run. KKM, Kementerian Kesihatan, is now working dengan Kementerian Ekonomi to develop specific policy on health reforms. Di bawah Dr. Zul memang ada Health Transformation Office di KKM. They've presented the first cut, I think this week, kepada Exco di M10, and we are working. Some of what you suggested is already taken into account. Basically, it's this, okay? How do we create more robust financing and that really can cater for a variety of supply and demand. Sekarang ni supply and demand dia is actually agak divided. Those premium ones private sector, kemudian yang kira no frillnya public sector, yang kat tengah-tengah ni tak ada. And yang kat tengah-tengah ni sometimes, as you point out, dia banyak pergi kepada university hospital, which is also a burden to kerajaan, because university hospital is heavily subsidized, and a lot of civil servants atau pensioner pergi kat sana, they don't earn revenue. Government has to continuously subsidize. But we know that from the demand, there is that big demand for that mid-tier. The issue is how do you fund them? How do you run them, as a private business, but with social responsibility? These are the details that we are ironing out, and I'm hoping that in RMK 13 we will be able to start pushing for another stream to make our healthcare more robust in terms of financing, in terms of offering this service to the right group of people going forward. So I think wait for 6, 7, 8 months, and I think there'll be some development on that. Third question tadi, Nazrul tanya pasal my gap, dan sebagainya kan. I mean, the reason why I think government, at least my view sekarang lah, why I perhaps don't focus sangat kepada my gap and ataupun good agricultural practice semua ni, because I think we really need to fix the supply and demand. And the supply and demand for agriculture, food produce semua ni is very much a function of value chain. So what we try to do dekat Kementerian Ekonomi, because Kementerian Ekonomi ni dia difficult sikit in the sense that we are cross-cutting. We are a central agency. Basically, we cut across everyone, but we don't have a sectoral responsibility. It's not my job to go and run and discuss regulation, legislation untuk pertanian. So we don't do that. But what we try to focus is that what are the structural issues that really affects the whole value chain. So in the case of agriculture and food produce, is actually very much about price transparency, is very much about debottlenecking supply chain. Sebab kita ada masalah supply chain ni. You tanam, you ada ladang kecil, katakanlah 10 hektar. You tanam sayur, katakanlah dekat Jelebu. Guess dekat mana pemborong akan ambil and jual kat mana benda tu? Dia akan ambil, dia jual kat pasar borong Selayang. Lepas tu, agaknya orang Seremban bila dia beli yang kedai-kedai semua, dia beli kat mana? Dia beli kat Jelebu ke? Dia beli kat Seremban ke? Dia beli kat mana? Dia beli kat Selayang. So you have this issue yang sebenarnya dia ditanam di Negeri Sembilan, dihantar ke Selayang untuk orang Negeri Sembilan naik ke Selayang bawa turun balik. And sebab itu when you compare the ex-farm price dengan final price ni, dia 2 kali ganda. Ex-farm mungkin RM3 sekilo, beli dekat pasar borong mungkin jadi RM6. By the time buat turun balik ke Negeri Sembilan, mula sampai ke kedai-kedai ni, dia dah jadi RM8 sekilo. And orang marah kenapa mahal semua ni. And actually, a lot of it is actually value chain and supply chain. Satu lagi ialah kita punya coverage of network of retail reach ni sebenarnya tidak lagi mencukupi di luar kawasan bandar. Dari segi retail industry kita, we went through a few changes kan. The late 90s, early 2000, the proliferation of hypermarket. So semua orang pergi ke hypermarket. So investment into more lower level, smaller size, the so-called mom and pops, corner shop, kedai dekat kawasan-kawasan ni sebenarnya tak banyak. Sebab tu orang payah dia. Jadi because of that, you put more layers into supply chain, every layer tu dia akan add cost to it. And so these are actually economic issues, supply chain issues yang kalau tanya Kementerian Pertanian, dia kata ini bukan saya, bukan. Jadi tanya KPDN kata kami punya kerja macam ni je. So 2025 for Kementerian Ekonomi, one of the top macro problems that we will attempt to resolve is actually price transparency and breaking down obstacles in supply chain. Not easy, I have to say not easy, tetapi that's something that has to happen. At my level, I know exactly kalau 1 kilo sayur sekian-sekian, I know what is ex-farm level, I know berapa banyak yang orang kata orang tengah ambil. Ini this whole issue orang kata jihad lawan orang tengah semua. Why is it that petani don't mind selling cheap to this so-called supply chain? Sebab the whole business revolve around credit and cash. So hari ini contohnya saya ada sayur, saya boleh jual lah at this price RM3 kan. What if 2 months down the road, my produce, my harvest tak bagus, tapi saya tak ada duit. Agaknya dekat mana dia orang ambil duit ni? It's actually from Peraih. Peraih ada buku 55 dia. So that's why the whole supply chain tu dah berpuluh tahun macam itu. You nak marah Peraih pun, Peraih kata, it's like, this is how I build my business. They trust me because I was there when it rains, I was there when it shines. So they don't mind that I take this much. And my cost is that aku daripada Jelebu kena bawa lori pergi all the way sampai. So all this sebenarnya is the nature of our supply chain that we need very focused intervention, and insyaAllah 2025, I think my kementerian fully aware, is an academic and economic challenge that we want to attempt to start the process. It will take some years for us to debottleneck the whole supply chain. Last tadi Dr. Faizal daripada BioNexus, yes, the discussion dan juga proposal kepada kerajaan in terms of R&D is precisely to have a centralized process. Supaya kita tak divide that 1 billion plus bagi chunk, kemudian masing-masing buat hala tuju. It must be very directed and very outcome based, and for that we need one centralized function. We are going through that process, how to operationalize it. Selalunya Kementerian Ekonomi memang kementerian yang paling dibenci lah, because kita kena jadi orang tengah. Orang berebut bajet semua ni, we have to do it. Yet at the same time, kementerian-kementerian juga, kalau saya duduk di kementerian pelaksana, saya kata, who are you to decide for us? So these are all the bureaucracy that we need to manage, but keputusan dasar itu telah dibuat, dan bila kita bentangkan mesti dengan Kementerian Ekonomi, share the plan with the public, I think you will have more clarity about how do we want to simplify R&D and grant and so on. The last question too about ecosystem, I actually have slightly different opinion than that. I sat down and went through dengan Musti many times. We have to manage this fine line between providing cradle to grave punya ecosystem kepada company yang kita cultivate. There is a fine line that maybe sometimes they may be very big, but sometimes it also makes them very complacent. Jadi we've gone through contohnya the chart kan, kementerian masing-masing, agensi masing-masing ni dia ada program grant ataupun support kepada different level of business. Masa mula-mula, kemudian as it's growing, kemudian commercialization, going to market and so on kan. If you map it, quite a lot of the companies ni dia lompat daripada satu stage ke satu stage, tapi they stay within the government ecosystem. Mula dia start dengan program ini dekat agensi ni, lepas tu dia pergi kat agensi ni, masuk dalam program ni pula, Whereas by nature is that I feel the focus of government is to really open up the opportunities to as many players as possible, because it's like salmon. We know that for a company to be big and to go regional, not everyone will be able to do it. Some companies will be able to do it, some will not. Jadi therefore the focus of government is to create the ecosystem so that you multiply as many of these companies dekat ground level, and then you provide. Up to that they have to compete, only a few will go big. And so if you look at South Korea, their transformation in digital and chips kan. Of course we have Samsung and then we have LG. Actually berapa banyak semiconductor companies, semiconductor Korea yang dekat manufacturing chips ni? Anyone knows in the world? 3. Berapa banyak front end designer company yang supported and eventually survive and they become a global player in designing chips di Korea, yang fit their design into companies like Samsung, LG semua ni? Berapa? 2. But they do it at the international scale. Jadi I have a slight different opinion about that. I feel that we should really cast the net as open as possible, let everyone compete at the early stage too. I think yes, we provide the support. But beyond a certain stage, they really need to compete. And only those ones that already dah nak sampai to the regional, global level, and it's not about market access and so on, maybe it's about IP, maybe it's about, some other barriers that they need to break, those ones kita boleh focus. Because that's how other countries have done it very successfully. Because otherwise, kalau kita tak berhati-hati, basically dia dalam ekosistem kerajaan sampai ke sudah 20 tahun pun, they still have not been able to scale up. That's something yang we also have to be careful. One last round because kita dah sangat lambat.
Okay. Assalamualaikum Datuk Seri. Saya Rahman Baco, Setiausaha Agung Persatuan Pengilang dan Industri Perkhidmatan Bumi Putera Malaysia, Pengilang Bumi Putera. Dan saya juga founder kepada new startup company Jadin Pharma. We are small generic manufacturing company di Dungun Terengganu, di mana kita produce creams dan juga sirap. Tapi kita masih struggling getting our product approved by MPRA. Yang pertama, mungkin Datuk Seri dari segi Kementerian Ekonomi dapat melihat bersama-sama dengan Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia timeline untuk kita membangunkan satu-satu produk generik yang baru ni. Selain daripada kita habiskan masa untuk formulation, stability studies, tapi untuk getting approved by MPRA KKM, it takes around 210 working days untuk dapatkan satu produk approved, lebih kurang 1 tahun kalau kita comply. Tapi mungkin ada 1-2 yang tak, ini mungkin ambil masa sehingga 2 tahun. Mungkin Kementerian Ekonomi dan Kementerian Kesihatan boleh melihat macam mana kita nak lebih efisien dan juga timeline ni dapat dipendekkan supaya kita dapat hasilkan lebih banyak generik sebelum ia dapat kita komersialkan. Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua, saya juga mewakili sahabat-sahabat saya, ahli-ahli farmasi dalam bidang farmasi community farmasi ataupun lebih dikenali mungkin orang kenal sebagai kedai farmasi. Walaupun ahli-ahli farmasi di community farmasi ini merupakan front end ataupun barisan harapan dalam bidang pharmaceutical, mana kita bekalkan ubat-ubatan generik ni, tapi kita lihat kita sebagai ahli farmasi community ni, kita seolah-olah disisihkan ataupun dianaktirikan dalam bidang pharmaceutical atau kesihatan ni. Terutama pertama sekali saya setuju dengan sahabat saya Encik Halim, kita mungkin Kementerian Ekonomi boleh melihat yang pertama dari segi dispensing right untuk ahli farmasi community, dan yang kedua dari segi apa-apa sistem yang diperkenalkan oleh pihak kerajaan seperti skim perubatan madani ataupun apa skim peduli sihat sebelum ni. Skim ini hanya melibatkan pembekalan ubat oleh klinik atau doktor saja, di mana farmasi komuniti ini tidak pernah dilibatkan di dalam sistem kesihatan ini. Jadi saya lihat mungkin Datuk Seri dan juga Kementerian Ekonomi dapat melihat macam mana kita dapat memartabatkan ataupun melibatkan ahli-ahli farmasi komuniti ini sebagai salah satu penyedia perkhidmatan kesihatan di Malaysia. Terima kasih. Datuk Seri.
Next.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, YB. My name is Andy Ng. I represent MIMA, Machinery and Equipment Manufacturer Malaysia. I'm a vice chairman. Can you hear me?
Can.
Good.
I missed one question tadi, but I'll answer it pasal ASEAN and so on. Yeah.
Okay. I also a founder of a successful company. It's a Malaysian first rotary school air compressor manufacturer, and we own the IP in Malaysia as well as we own the IP in Germany. And I'm a US grad engineer, but I chose to interested in German machine during the 90s, so I went to Germany and learned the machine design. So hopefully one day we can make in Malaysia. I make it as a success story for Malaysia, but we still feel challenged because we are SME. We lack capital to compete with the world best. For example, Ingersoll-Rand, US, and Atlas Copco, Belgium. They are like 5 billion to 10 billion turnover company, and Malaysia don't have a high technology company like ours. But we still feel very challenging to penetrate our own market as well as regional market due to, like YB say, mentality, branding. Although our IP is in Germany now, still when you mention about locally made machinery, especially high technology machinery, orang kata I tak confident lah Malaysia buat. Kalau buat in Germany, okay, I approve, Mr. Andy. So I tak faham mengapa negara kita sudah independent more than 60 years, and many of our engineer, including government agency engineer, so-called expert lah, pakar-pakar yang pandai, tapi dia ada mentality jajahan. Aku tak faham. So although I'm a Chinese, I understand. But when are we going to break this mentality jajahan and to become like Singapore, to become like Japan? You know? At one point, I very sad. I almost want to migrate to Australia. Just give up. But I see, if I don't fight, who will fight for us? Singaporean won't come and fight for us. All the Malaysian manufacturer have to work together, no matter how small you are. Now I can claim I'm middle, not very successful, but my machine is like ribu unit in government agency, in MINDEF, in KPM, in JKR, in everywhere, in private sector, in Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, all the top one, they know our high technology they buy. But still facing problem of mentality, jajahan, which is hope can be addressed by government through education, to upscaling, to showcase local product and endorse local product. This is what I speak, and I speak on behalf of all SME across the sector, from pharmaceutical to machinery to agriculture. And we should be proud of Malaysian make. Okay. My association MIMA actually compiled about 8 lists for your Rancangan Malaysia ke-13, which we submit to MPC. Encik Rahman there, MPC, Encik Rahman. We have to give applause to him. So he submitted to you. Due to limited time, so I don't want to mention all 8. I just summarize maybe 2 or 3. We also have proposal, we have issue, for example. Okay, let me read fast the 8. First is the issue we have on our machinery association. Skilled labor shortage, which YB already mentioned, so I don't want to elaborate. Second issue is limited adoption of Industrial 4.0. Okay. Third issue is low R&D and low D&D. D&D, everyone know about R&D. But the thing that create value actually is D&D. You see, just like a chair. Chair have been invented 4 legs, right? But the Japanese make it as a massage chair. That's D&D. It's not pure R&D. So that is where high value added. Many invention, actually you can make a lot of money. Like iPhone, for example, they basically string the personal computer and the telephone. It is not a pure R&D. It's a D&D. Okay, so government should emphasize companies who are good in commercialize to D&D instead of pure R&D at the lab level, at the university level, because it creates less value. That's my suggestion. Okay, the fourth one is over-dependent on imported machinery. Okay, the figure I quote from Matrec, machinery and equipment import since January to October 2024 is about 94 billion, which is 8.3% of Malaysian total import value of 1.14 trillion. That's from Matrec data. How we support local manufacturer is when we over-dependent on overseas. So
you might have to speed up a bit.
Sorry. When we over-dependent, a nation who over-dependent on imported machine will remain that way. You will not be able to break your mentality. You see, I respect Indonesia. I went to Indonesia Medan last October. They have the world's biggest palm oil exhibition. I was surprised. They are more confident than Malaysia government. I said, I want to supply my compressor to Indonesia. First thing, they say, do you have a kilang here? If you don't build a kilang here, forget about it. So I had to pack and go. Malaysia, opposite. Any Tom, Dick and Harry brand also masuk. Right? Eventually, the world best, also imported one, will conquer the market. And the local manufacturers stand no chance. Indonesia, they are very visionary. I respect President Jokowi. He's very brave. So, like iPhone, they stop iPhone from entering their market unless they produce there. So, Malaysians government, I throw a question to all government. YB, maybe you can do something about it. Okay? So this is one way to break the mentality, jajahan. Okay. Secondly is this is my sixth issue, which is dependency on foreign direct investment. Governments focus too much on foreign direct investment. What about DDI, domestic direct investment? But domestic direct investment, I understand that they have weaknesses because of financial resource or technical resource. Maybe government can so-called force the foreign MNC to join venture with local SME and then create the ecosystem for direct domestic investment. That's our suggestion from the MIMA, from our association. Then number 7 is competition from regional player. Okay, I realize neighboring country like Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, of course China, they are developing rapidly. Somehow they can make it. I don't know why Malaysia is stuck in the middle. They grow fast. So my suggestion to government is enhance Malaysia's position as a manufacturing hub or manufacturing center for parts, components, and to serve the regional market. Because ASEAN, as I know, is one of the most potential market in next 5 to 10 years in the world. So we should take this opportunity to be a center of manufacturing hub for the regional market. So can enlarge our market share. Okay. The last one is ineffective support for SME. Okay. Everyone know that SME face a lot of challenge, especially in manufacturing. I'm talking on behalf of manufacturing. SME dominate, I think, more than 90% of Malaysia manufacturing. But I would say half of them is separuh mati lah. Because of COVID, they can't compete. So they lack of funding, lack of skilled worker, lack of talents. So this one I will address. I will let government do the job to address this issue for our member. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last question.
Thank you very much. My name is Lee Jin. I'm from the Pharmaceutical Association of Malaysia. Thank you, YB, for creating this forum. And actually, it's like a roundup of what everybody is saying today with regards to pharmaceutical. So there are some things in which YB you had mentioned that I thought was very helpful for us, because you had recognized that pharmaceutical is a very unique sector by itself. And we'd be very happy to sit down together to further explore how we can look at expanding this market. So I'm a little bit afraid to speak now, because just before me he was talking about the mentality jajahan lah. So the mentality jajahan tu menakutkan lah, because Pharmaceutical Association of Malaysia, we represent 45 multinational pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, so
So dia penjajah, eh?
So bukan. So this is where,
kidding.
yeah, I know. This is where I think it's all gone a little bit wrong, because this is already the RMK 13. And year after year, or rather RMK after RMK, we are still doing the same things over and over. So I would like to suggest that for RMK 13, we make a bold reformation. It's not about the jajahan. It's about how we can integrate. Yeah, so I just give you some very quick numbers. Everything in which we've been talking about just now and more. So like Pfizer, for example. Okay, these are all my members who have formed manufacturing facilities in Singapore, even though it costs them way, way more. So Pfizer has spent 1 billion building a factory for API Could be APIs just now. How many times I heard about APIs? Pfizer contributed 1 billion to build facility in Singapore to create APIs. Novartis, they spent 256 million, all Singapore dollars, yeah. AstraZeneca, they spent 2 billion. AbbVie spent 223 million. Sanofi spent 638 million, GSK 343 million, Amgen 535 million, Roche 95 million, MSD 700 million, and you know, when I saw this, I could cry. Yeah, so first and foremost, when we want to talk about jajahan too, I feel that, you know, we have to recognize the fact that there is something wrong somewhere, exactly like what Encik Halim said. Yeah, something wrong somewhere. So what is this wrong that we're talking about? I asked my members, 45 of them, what's wrong with Malaysia? What's wrong with you all? You know, Singapore's so expensive. You go and invest there. What's wrong with Malaysia? And they quickly rattle off these 10 quick ones. They say, number 1, lack of talent. Number 2, poor incentives. Number 3, difficulty in getting early approvals. Number 4, challenges for early access. Number 5, too much bureaucracy. Number 6, practices are not transparent. Number 7, not understanding what businesses need to succeed. Number 8, increasing inclination for halal laws. Now, this is where there's a caveat, yeah? So for the halal laws, I understand that this is going to be an advantage for Malaysia, where if we were to import, but now we are talking about bringing them here. So we have to hit a balance, which right now we are not. And there's an inefficient economic development board compared to Singapore. This is where I feel that the economy ministry has a very big role to play, especially now we're talking about coming up with RMK 13, and we're not talking about today and tomorrow. We're talking about a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and we want to make sure that the next 5-year plan is going to be of value and it's going to be a real reformative, not just talking about the same things over and over. And the last one, IP protection is not a priority in Malaysia. So these are all the main reasons in which MNCs say that they don't want to come to Malaysia. So one thing which I think I'd like to suggest is that, you know, we talk about pharmaceuticals as though it's only related to KKM, like what we were talking about just now. You know, YB, you keep saying that, oh, we have to sit down with KKM to talk about. Yes, but we have to look at it in both sections. One section, yes, it's going to be good for the healthcare of Malaysia. We have prepared also some notes with regards to how we can contribute to Malaysia. I'm going to pass these to the Secretariat later. You know, we have some sort of suggestions on how we can transform Malaysia's healthcare and how we can promote clinical research in Malaysia, because this is the difference. We're not asking the Malaysian government for money. We want to give money, but we need the Malaysian government to have the structure and the kind of policies that make it business friendly for people. Yep. So not to talk about jajahan, but let's talk about JVs. Let's talk about how we can work together, bringing the investments, and we look at healthcare as an economic force, not just as healthcare alone, because it's going to work both ways. Once we get the MNCs to come and invest in Malaysia, a little bit like what they were doing in Indonesia, like what we heard about, but we will be able to have certain level of drug security, medicine security. So that's something which we can think about. As the numbers that I mentioned just now, if we were to come up with JVs like that, it is going to attract a lot of FDIs, and the economic value will go far beyond just FDI. So think about the knowledge transfer. You see, everybody here talks about, oh, there's a lack of talent, which is true. But when we have these international players in Malaysia, it's going to create a lot of employment opportunities for Malaysia. So we have Malaysians working in these MNCs, and it is a huge opportunity for knowledge transfer. So 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, we will be able to see the impact. And when we want to talk about long term, let's look at how this will be the right way to create a knowledge-based economy. So rather than we send satu orang, dua orang pergi training dekat Germany, send satu orang pergi training dekat Korea ke apa ke, why don't we just invite them here and we train everybody who will be working for them, and also is going to be gainful employment. So these are just some of the opportunities. I think the last one in which I'd like to mention is that clinical trials, for a lot of the local players here, the manufacturers here, they all struggle with clinical trials, yeah, because as you had correctly pointed out right from the beginning, pharmaceuticals ni memang very unique punya sector. So the investments are tremendous. It will cost you easily 50 million just to discover a compound that is helpful for one therapeutic area, one disease. So, 50 million just to discover that drug, and it takes 10 years of trials to make sure that it's safe, it's not going to kill someone, that it's effective at a certain dosage. So a lot of trials, and you need to have very deep pockets in order to be doing this. So that's the reason why I feel that JV is still the way to go. And clinical trials in Malaysia, we are already a growing hub in the region. So what we would like to propose that for Malaysia to contribute more and to invest more into how we can grow clinical research in Malaysia, working with the MNC pharmaceutical companies, because they are already pouring millions into the clinical research sector in Malaysia. What we need are just policies that are friendly, business practices that are friendly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So 5 minutes. Apa ni kita pergi makan? First question ni saya terlepas tadi pasal, I think Malaysia's position ASEAN tu is quite, by now, I mean there's clarity. Somehow I think local audience don't pay as much attention about our narrative for ASEAN compared to international audience. There's a lot of hype and focus on the rise of Malaysia as the chairman of ASEAN, not so much because of just Malaysia ke apalah, because there is this realization that ASEAN is going to be a very influential economic bloc, and from the government perspective, that's why we push and seal the deal with Singapore for JSSEZ, because while ASEAN is attractive, but ASEAN is also very fragmented. So unless through Malaysia's leadership, we can put closer integration as a number one agenda for ASEAN, then I think it builds more conviction about the potential of ASEAN as a market. So that JSSEZ, ASEAN, Malaysia's leadership, I think is understood a lot more outside than inside Malaysia. So I think if there is one thing that we have clear focus is how to leverage on ASEAN's chairmanship to really position Malaysia as a launch pad and entry point into ASEAN. The issue about talent, I think, we all understand it, is a mixed bag of everything. On the one hand, in terms of if you ask employers or investors will cite, we have a problem getting the right talent. Kemudian employers will say that, we have problems finding people. But actually, if you look at the macro perspective, kita juga ada huge structural issues in our economy. The biggest employers are SMEs. SMEs cannot compete in terms of pay with MNCs or GLCs. Therefore, a lot of graduates actually are underemployed in our economy. Kalau dia dekat SME ke, let alone kalau dia buat Grab lah, they are underemployed. So that's why we have about 20% plus underemployment program. And part underemployment problem. And part of the reason why they are underemployed is because there is not enough high-value jobs. And there is not enough high-value jobs because while SMEs form the largest group of our companies in our economy, SMEs struggle to scale up. So if they started out doing that in 1990, they still do that now. The pathway to scaling up in Malaysia, and without scaling up, you don't have access to financing, to technology, to the market, and so on. So these are structural issues which we have to intervene at all levels. I think RMK 13 put focus most drastically on education and upskilling. And in fact, we are hoping that when RMK 13 goes to public, goes to parliament, the first impression of RMK 13, it is less of economic talk, more of education talk. Whether or not we can pull it off and harmonize everyone, that's a different ball game altogether. But at least that's the thinking about RMK 13 now. It's actually very lopsided towards education and upskilling. We've cleared it, we've presented it, first cut to Prime Minister. PM also agree is all about education and upskilling. And I think it's going to be the first RMK where the focus doesn't seem to be economy. The focus is actually education and upskilling. But while we say that, of course, we have to admit that we really need to manage this whole issue about upscaling the SMEs, which I will come sekejap lagi kan. I think the first question, the last question, 30% pharmaceutical industry, yes, in terms of MPRA, government is going to table anti-red tape or Red Tape Reduction Act yang dipanggil TIZAM in March, and the bill basically mandates for red tapes reduction. Before this, actually, kita tak ada undang-undang tau yang nak mengawal how the red tapes and bureaucracy grow. So over 60 years, every time the country progress, ada industri baru, ada masalah baru, so we keep adding regulation lah, rules and so on. So that's why lama-lama, people complain about bureaucracy lah. So with the act, it's basically a government is obliged to right-size the bureaucracy. And, there are a series of things and commitments, adherence to national law that government has to go through in order to right-size the bureaucracy. And one of that, which is, I think, is the one pilot scheme for red tape reduction is actually pharmaceutical licensing. So I think one of the earliest beneficiary of government's red tape reduction is MPRA. So I think that at least will put focus on making it much easier across the board, from stability tests, kemudian clinical trial, registration, and so on lah. The second question tadi pasal dispenser lah kan, dispensing to be separated daripada klinik so that pharmacists can dispense. So that means that GPs can no longer dispense lah. You go to klinik, sekarang ni you go to klinik, doktor tu lah bagi GP tu bagi diagnosis, you pergi beli ubat dekat situ juga, dia prescribe kan. There has always been this challenge kerana the industry, there's two views. GPs are totally against it because that will take away one large part of the business from the GPs. Pharmacists are totally for it. So I think government has to revisit and tengok kan. So this is more a political issue more than anything else. So siapa yang nak jadi mangsa ni? Kan? So I think every now and then ada je issue. Okay, there's a very strong view about maintaining as it is because the argument is that this is very important for health coverage and so on, because if you separate it and then it will push up the price, convenience, orang dah biasa pergi ke GP dapat. So that's one argument. The other argument is that this is really this is not how it is done elsewhere. Tempat lain, basically you take prescription daripada GP and then therefore you go and buy medicine from the pharmacy. So I think this process will be ongoing and I don't think it has been brought up so far lah dekat kerajaan so far, because it's a very dicey issue kan. You are looking at both fierce groups of people. So managing these two fierce group of people is not as straightforward lah. The whole thing about, and I think I can answer Legion, is it? Dengan Andy, some of the question about pharmacy, penjajah, tak penjajah, and so on. Part of it is actually government policy. Part of it is also industrial standards. government policy translates into procurement. And government's procurement actually form a large bulk of our industry, of our economy. So kalau government's punya standard tu is gold standard, and when the gold standard means is imported, then they filter down semua lah. I mean, it's like PM likes to repeat this one anecdote lah, which is he turned down one tender. And he asked to go back and redo it. Sebab tender tu specifically kata katil hospital tu mesti datang daripada a certain country. Country tu je. Katil tak boleh. Country tu je boleh buat katil. Kita tak boleh katil ke? After all, it's katil. Kan? So sometimes, that's the process that we are going through jugalah. Macam saya Zikri tanya tadi, how this is streamlined. Sebenarnya, the policy tu tak berbeza. What you think and what we think as ministers tak berbeza. But the moment they go into the detail, because procurement is decided by spec. Spec are done by technical people. And technical people, kalau saya tanya dia orang, I call certain people, why is like this? Well, that's the standard. We have to follow a certain standard sebab kalau tak built by this standard, rakyat kata cokia. So it's actually quite, so I ask, for example, why do we need to build things like this? Because it's expensive. Why is it that we cannot? Because government's construction, tender and semua, contohnya, is of higher than industry standard. It's the gold standard. Everything kena standard yang paling bagus sekali. It's good for the public, I suppose. Walaupun I don't know whether the public thinks that it's a gold standard. Tapi definitely it costs a lot of money, and therefore government procurement becomes higher. So we need to have a clarity, contohnya, what is the trade-off? What kind of standards, if we were to bring it down a bit, okay, how far can we tolerate a different standard than what we are used to? So all this ni ada di semua kementerian. Technical standardnya, construction standardnya, machinery standardnya, and so on. And to a certain extent, that's also prevalent dalam private sector. Private sector, dalam kerajaan, at least now, we have the process called value management process. Kementerian Ekonomi, for every project, we really go through in detail to make sure we strip the nice to have. If you want to do this, procurement this is to deliver a certain function, you just focus on what you need, not what's nice to have, kan? Dalam private sector, sometimes they don't have that. Jadi there's always this bias. It's actually quite true. There's always bias that we doubt, our own products and so on. I've mentioned in the beginning, there's a series of carve-out policies that we are doing, bermula dengan government procurement, and we are pushing it to GLC. It's just that we really need to navigate all the trade laws. We sign CPTPP, we cannot be seen to promote protectionism. And that's why, this thing about Indonesia and so on, they can play a slightly different ball game because of their size. Our economic growth and prosperity relies solely on our reputation as a clean, open, and vibrant trading nation. The moment we bring in send different messages about protectionism and so on, then it will make it quite difficult. In that spirit, actually, we need to be able to make sure that FDI is complemented very well dengan DDI, because FDI brings a certain investment and expertise that we don't have. But for the FDI to grow, they need to build downstream value chain and supply chain. And that's, I think, what we can do faster and better. Government can design incentive and slot in. That's the bit that we are thinking about, using IP as a leverage. Because if you want to come in, this is the IP, but for you to have this IP, because it's a G2G, government basically build and have this IP, for you to have this access, even though you are 1 billion investment, we will be we will not entertain unless you have this 10-year program to build a downstream and embed into the supply chain that you require. Is as applicable to electronics, is as applicable to biotech and pharmaceutical. And JSSEZ, I think, will be able to recover some lost grounds dengan Singapore over the last 2-3 decades when it comes to pharmaceutical investments, you know. So I can go on and on and on, tapi I think in the interest of our stomach, and I don't think you want to go through another 2 hours of this. Let me just conclude this. Thank you very much. I think the good thing is that a lot of the suggestions semua tu, we are on the same page. You know, the SME punya issue is scaling up, and government spends about 40 billion ringgit every year giving money to SMEs. That I have to say is actually the money given to build up SMEs are one of the biggest budget in government, about 40 billion every year. Tapi over many decades, while kita ada banyak SME, our SME cannot scale up. So at the end of the day, 97% of our companies are all SMEs, but dia nak bayar gaji lebih pun dia ada problem, dia nak ada access naik pun ada problem. So there are those structural issues that we are focusing. One of the, selain daripada price transparency and supply chain, the other economic and academic challenge that Kementerian Ekonomi is attempting this year is also how exactly do you want to scale up SME. So I think we are all on the same page. The challenge is really doing it. And that's the challenge that is way beyond me. Dekat Kementerian Ekonomi will attempt for RMK 13 to really put what we call bold and radicals to really shake the ground so that we begin to have a program. I think whatever we have to take it outside because we have to stop when. So that we can begin to have a structural change in the next 5-10 years. What we need is that the industry, every time government buka the pathway, industry comes in and run with it. If we are able to do that, then I think, you know, we have a very good future in the next 5-10 years in time for ASEAN getting our place in the world as the 3rd or 4th largest economy, and Malaysia will be able to position ourselves as the center and launch pad into ASEAN market. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And have a nice lunch.